tragic. Demons appear like magic. Money long so elastic. Foreign fabrics to fashion.
I'm itching for money, cash addict. She get drawn in my pockets like Titanic. When I get on the beat, it's Jurassic. Little niggas don't want static.
Wavy come like tsunami and drown you with the drip out.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the Coos Ballroom podcast. If you guys are listening to this and you guys know about me, you guys obviously know that I also have a YouTube, Coos Ballroom. But as I've been telling you guys for a while now on Twitter and my YouTube, I've wanted to start up a podcast. So this is the first episode of the podcast. On here, I got Duncan Smith, godfather of Pistons Twitter. I got Sham, Mohile, my former site expert at Piston Powered. On this podcast, I'll obviously be talking about majority Detroit sports, mostly the Pistons, but also the Lions in the future. But now that all of that's out the way, I'm excited to record today's episode with these two guys. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Shane, how are you, man?
Oh, I'm swell. Just, snowed in, 8 inches outside.
Yeah, Sham, this is in Minnesota, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's Michigan's going to get it soon. We haven't got it yet, but I know it's coming soon. So
yeah, you'll get your 8 inches soon. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Something to look forward to.
All right. So for today's episode, we're going to be talking about Christian Wood. We had a lot of drama go on this week with Christian Wood on Twitter. Most of it, I'm going to say, is just Pistons fans getting worked up for no reason. But there was some information that came out about it. But right before we get into that, there was some news that came out as we're recording this, I think 30 minutes before I started recording this, about Blake Griffin. We're not going to talk about it much. I just wanted to mention it real quick for everybody. Blake Griffin, apparently, from Zach Lowe on his podcast today, said there seems to be some level of interest in Blake. He's had multiple teams ask about Blake. So, nothing too crazy. Obviously, there's going to be some teams that are mindful of Blake. We don't really know what that means in interest. We don't really know much about any of that. So, it's not big. It's not big news. It's just, Pistons fans are going to take and run with that. So I'll probably make a video about it on my YouTube later, another day, and get you guys all worked up some more. But we're going to stick to Christian Wood for this podcast here. So first topic we're going to talk about here is Duncan. We're going to go with you first. Obviously, Christian Wood, he's a free agent this upcoming offseason. Whenever that happens, I don't know when. I don't know if they even have an exact date yet for free agency, but when that comes, what do you think is what's the chance that you believe Christian Wood leaves? Give me a percentage chance you think that he's not in a Pistons jersey next season.
I think if we're talking about a percentage, maybe something along the lines of 25%. I don't think that it's especially likely, but I can see it happening. I think that there are probably a lot of paths to that happening. So I don't think it's especially likely, but it wouldn't really surprise me at this point.
Sham, what do you think about that? What's the percentage chance you believe that Christian Wood leaves the Pistons?
It's just so hard to tell right now because and it's been reported that the Pistons will offer market value for Christian Wood, but I think that's the biggest question is how much he's worth. The Pistons may throw out a number that they think is fair and they'll walk away if it goes above that number, and Christian Wood may get an offer from some team like the Knicks that's way above that number and then accept it. So it's not like the Pistons don't want to bring him back, and it's not like Christian Wood doesn't want to come back. It's just that there are so many variables in play that it's just so hard to put a percentage on it. If I really were pushed, I would probably say 50-50. I have no idea.
All right, so I also, at the beginning of the offseason, or right when the season got postponed, I thought that it was pretty much a done deal that he was coming back to the Pistons. Everything that we had heard, everything that we had read, everything that Christian Wood had said in the locker room, the way he acted in the locker room, everything we heard from Dwayne Casey. Basically, I thought all signs were pointing to that, yeah, Christian Wood wants to come back. The Pistons want him back. I don't really see how they messed this one up, how they just how he leaves, because it seems like both parties are interested. But since then, I have started to get, I won't say worried, because I don't really think that he's a boom or bust, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I do think that there's more of a chance for him to leave because, at least hopefully, because I believe that the Pistons, like you said, Sham, shouldn't be offering him anything more than market value. They shouldn't overpay him. And it seems like that there's more teams. I feel like there's more teams now that I know are going to be willing to overpay him at least in Piston terms. Like I see a lot of Phoenix Suns fans tweeting me lately, talking about paying him $16 million. And I've already told all of them, like, if $16 million is what it takes to get Christian Wood, you guys can have him. Are you guys, like, down to pay Christian Wood $16 million?
To me,
no.
That's definitely on the high side. As far as I'm concerned, the drop dead point where the Pistons shouldn't pay what it takes is whatever amount that they believe they will be able to trade him for. That's, for me, that is like the biggest thing for them this offseason. It's like no more signing deals that they aren't going to be able to trade later, because essentially, like, you're not going to be able to build a team in Detroit via free agency. So what you need to do is build it through drafts and trades. So all the signings that they make have got to be affordable and flippable. So, while setting a number that they're willing to pay to get him is fine, what ends up mattering more down the road is what other teams are willing to pay him or are willing to value him at in the trade market.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Even with that, $16 million is just, I think that's way up my, like, I've said this throughout the offseason, and people have called me Christian Wood haters for it. But I've maintained that the price that I want to pay for Christian Wood is somewhere between $10 and $12 million. Like, I don't want to move off of that. I've listed my worries about it. I made a video about it. You guys can check it out on my YouTube at Coos Ballroom, same thing as a podcast. But I've already said multiple times that Christian Wood deserves to be paid. I just don't know if it's by the Pistons, because last year he had a great season, mainly the last, 13 games without Andre. He played great, but if you go before then, before this season, he never shot that well from three-point range. Even if you go to his G League statistics, he never shot that well. He was not a good shooter before last year. He had issues off the court before last year. You heard Dwayne Casey talk about it in the offseason about him needing to be a professional, et cetera, all that kind of stuff. So there's a very real chance, in my opinion, that last year could be a fluke. And because of that, I don't want to pay more than $10 to $12 million, because if his three-point shot sinks, or if he gets paid, and now that he gets paid, he starts just not caring, or he's okay, I got my money, whatever, all that kind of thing, then his value drops immediately, and now you've overpaid for him. So I think $10 to $12 million for me is the sweet spot to where you can safely bet that it's not a fluke. But yeah, I think $16 million probably is over what the Pistons should offer him. But this leads into the next question is, obviously the Pistons traded Andre at the deadline. There was a big controversy over that, because I'll say here myself, I was not a fan of it. I hated it. And I still am very vocal about how much I hated the trade. It's not so much about the fact that we traded Andre. It's the fact of the trade that we did for him, getting Brandon Knight, John Henson, who basically, those two guys are basically nothing. You might as well send us some bag of chips, and then a second-round pick, which I think was just – I think that I've maintained that I think if they just held on to him until this offseason, they probably would have got more value once he was a true expiring, because I think we all knew that he was going to opt in. But the point is, they didn't get much value for their star player in Andre. They didn't get no value for Markieff or Reggie. They chose not to trade Derrick Rose at the deadline, even though it sounds like that they will look to trade him this season or in the offseason. Maybe there's some more value there. And they also didn't trade Christian Wood at the deadline, or Langston Galloway, or basically anything that could have possibly got them assets from our point of view. If Christian Wood were to leave now in the offseason, just walk away from the Pistons, and now they don't get no value for Christian Wood either. They've now went with Andre Drummond, not much value in the trade. They let Reggie Jackson and Markieff Morris go without getting anything. They didn't trade Langston Galloway for anything. So far, as of yet, Derrick Rose hasn't been traded for anything. So we'll start with Sham here. Sham, considering everything I just said, how bad do you think it would be for the Pistons if Christian Wood were to walk away in free agency for no value?
Not bad at all, because the only opportunity that the Pistons had to trade Christian Wood was pre-trade deadline, right? And Christian Wood made he basically made the money that he's going to make this offseason after the trade deadline. So how would the Pistons would have known? Like, how would they have known pre-trade deadline that he was going to be this guy that's going to be so coveted in free agency, right? It's not fair. Like, you can always go back and look and use hindsight and all of these decisions and everything. But at the time, at the trade deadline, he wasn't going to net the Pistons anything, especially if Markieff Morris and even Andre Drummond like either netted nothing or like had no value at the trade deadline or had maximum like a second round pick. Like, you know, it's easy to play this hindsight game with the Pistons because they do have a lot of questionable outcomes from their decisions. But I think in this instance, it's not fair to criticize them for that move.
What do you have to say about that, Duncan?
I think that, you know, there was some interest. I remember the Celtics were one of the teams that was rumored to maybe be asking around, but I don't believe that we had any idea of like just what kind of return was possible for him. So I don't really know what the market was like. So it's pretty hard to really judge what kind of what kind of level of disaster that we would assign Wood walking for nothing. Because we just don't know what they could have gotten. You guys could correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I don't remember there being like a specific return or package or like draft pick or anything like that was attached to him.
I think his name was just floated out there, but I don't think anybody actually expected any kind of good return out of it. I think you're just one of those names that you hear in trade deadlines and trade machines and whatever. Nothing actually of substance.
Yeah, I think that might have been the case. So it does make it kind of hard to accurately criticize them just because, like, you know, what are you going to flip them for? Were you going to get them for, like, were you going to get another 2023 second round pick or something? You know, like, obviously the Pistons weren't exactly like squeezing teams for assets when it comes to trade deals and stuff like that at the deadline last year. So it's hard to say exactly like what level of disaster I would assign to it based on that. As far as like him walking and leaving the Pistons high and dry, I don't think that it would be great. But again, like going over any kind of like reasonable resale value is the biggest mistake that can happen. So I think that overpaying in free agency would be a much bigger disaster than letting him walk for nothing at this point.
And like, didn't we crucify Stan Van Gundy, the GM, for doing exactly what the Pistons fans are wanting, like this front office to do, overpaying for guys that have like short stretches of brilliant basketball and then not end up panning out, and then being stuck with this like albatross contract with the guy that does nothing? Isn't that what we crucified Stan Van Gundy for?
Oh yeah, look at Langston Galloway, who had like a ridiculous post trade deadline stretch. Who was it, with the Kings or the Pelicans? It's all jumbled in
the Pelicans,
yeah, the Pelicans, and you know, that was what got him his for Galloway's standards his big contract. Then like John Lure hit 6 3-pointers in like 2 months or something like that for the and Van Gundy decided that was enough to make him Kevin Love light, you know.
Right.
So yeah, that's exactly the mistake that I think Troy Weaver will best be served to not falling into. You know, I don't want to presume to say that he won't fall into that mistake, but I don't think that he's going to shape everything around the same philosophy that Van Gundy had, which is like you have to pay the Detroit premium to get free agents. All free agents, any free agents, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to come play in Detroit unless you give them like 50% more market value or give them like max years or something like that, which is obviously like, you know, foolish. Like I don't think that that Weaver is going to fall into the same bidding against yourself mindset that Van Gundy locked himself into from day one.
And like getting into cap hell like that accelerates the rebuild / timeline. Like the whole reason why the Pistons never actually went through a good rebuild when Stan Van Gundy was here is because he paid a bunch of people when he first got here and went too fast, and then now had to justify his salary, you know, table by winning games. And then we ended up being stuck in this sea of mediocrity, 8, 9 seed, 10 seed. And had to wait out all of these contracts and had to ship out contracts with attaching assets. And it playing this game is dangerous when you have guys that haven't really proven themselves beyond like a 3-month stretch at best.
Absolutely.
All right, so I think that it would be. I don't think it would be catastrophic if he were to just leave, but I definitely don't think it's ideal. And I understand what you guys are saying. With obviously it's hindsight because he wasn't playing like how he played after Andre left before then. But I feel like I was at the time when we traded Andre. Once we traded Andre. I'm sure you guys, everyone listening, if anyone doesn't believe me, you could probably go pull up my tweets somehow. I don't feel like going all the way back and looking for them, but I'm sure you guys could find it that once we traded Andre, I had just said, if we're trading Andre, just get rid of everybody. Just get rid of everything that possibly has assets. Just trade everything. Just get as much assets now. Just move them. Move Langston. Move Derek, move Reggie, move Markieff, move Christian Wood, move Langston. Like I just once we got rid of Andre, it was over. Just move everything, and we didn't do that. So that's fine. But now, if Christian Wood were to just leave, I don't think it would be catastrophic. But I also don't think it would have been ideal because I was in the boat that I would have been fine trading him at the deadline before he even broke out. So obviously, we wouldn't have netted as much as. Who knows how much we would have netted? Probably wouldn't have been very much because obviously he hadn't broken out yet. But I think I think there's, at least from what I saw, like nationally across like different fan bases and different riders across the league, there were people talking about Christian Wood before he took off, and once Andre was traded, like there was already people starting to notice that he was playing pretty well in the limited time. So I feel like if they know that, I would think it's fair to say that some GMs were at least aware of Christian Wood, and we could have got something. May not have been good, amazing value. May have been something along the lines of a second-round pick, but that would have been better than losing for nothing. So I don't think it would be catastrophic. I think Laz for Detroit Bad Boys wrote something about this, that it's not a big deal if he were to just walk away. Which he's not. And also, our friend Joe tweeted about this too. He's not as big as a deal as Pistons fans are making him out to be. Obviously, he's a nice player, and the Pistons would like to have him back. But he's not this make or break foundational piece that Pistons fans are making him out to be. So, like I said, it wouldn't be catastrophic, but I just think that it wouldn't have been really ideal. And I think it's bad if he just walks away from anything. But it's not like to the point where I'd like start screaming at Troy Weaver and like start criticizing the front office. It's just I'd be like, damn, that's not exactly how I thought it should go, but this is what it is. We'll just keep moving forward. You guys have anything to say to that?
I think you summed it up pretty well. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. So this will lead us to the next topic that really got this going yesterday. Really, why I wanted to make this the topic of the first podcast. So yesterday, Rod Beard he's with the the News. Rod Beard with the Detroit News tweeted out something about. Actually, I have the tweet right here. He said, "I'm no general manager, but if Christian would go somewhere else and it's not a sign and trade, then yeah, I got nothing for you." So then, in previous days, I had been talking to Nick Henkel. I'm sure everyone knows who he is. We were talking about the possibility of signing and trading Christian Wood, and he brought up that you should be able to do it because of Malcolm Brogdon last year, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, Malcolm Brogdon was a restricted free agent. That's why they were able to do it. I wasn't sure that you could even trade unrestricted free agents once you sign them, because I thought once you sign the unrestricted free agent, you have to wait that minimum time, that time period before you can trade them. I think it's January 15th, December 15th, something like that. So I asked Rod, and Rod basically didn't know the exact answer, and then Duncan thankfully came through and helped. Added Keith Smith, NBA, which I'm assuming he had like some kind of cap experience, or he's like some kind of cap expert or something. He knew what he was talking about basically, and he gave us the answer of you can sign and trade unrestricted free agent immediately, but it's a little complicated. If they use his rights to re-sign him, actually re-sign him and not sign and trade, he'll have a January 15th equivalent trade restriction, which is what I was talking about earlier. But if they use the cap space, they'll be able to trade him whenever. Bet on space for money reasons. So I'm gonna keep it a buck. I didn't that explanation wasn't as clear to me. I'm gonna keep it a stack. I was a little bit confused still, but basically what I came through with, I started reading about it afterwards. It is possible to trade him, sign and trade him in free agency, but at least from my point of view, and I want to hear you guys from this, I have two questions about it. So the first question is, I don't think that there's any like realistic reason or like any kind of, or why an opposing team or Christian Wood would be interested in sign and trading when they could just, like, basically what I'm saying is, like, why would an opposing team want to sign and trade him when they can just sign him to how much they want him? Why would they give up assets to get him when they can just, like, give him the money without having to give up the assets? So I don't see, like, why it would make sense for Wood or opposing team to even engage the Pistons in a sign and trade. Duncan, what do you think about that?
No, it wouldn't make any sense at all. Sign and trades are valid when the best example I can come up with, like right off the top of my head, is the situation of Jimmy Butler and the Sixers and the Heat last season. Jimmy wanted to go to the Heat, but the Heat didn't have cap space. So rather than risking Butler leaving Philadelphia for nothing, they worked out a sign and trade. It helped Philadelphia because they didn't lose Jimmy for nothing. It helped Miami because they didn't have cap space, but they could trade assets for him. And it helped Jimmy because it made the path for him to go where he wanted to. You're not going to have that situation with Christian Wood because, especially if, Bobby Marks's projection of roughly a mid-level exception being his value in free agency. Most teams can do that. Most teams can just sign him with that exception. And so there's no reason to give the Pistons anything for their time or their money. There's no reason for teams to just do the Pistons a solid. Like for example, the Nets sent back D'Angelo Russell for KD, but that was, as much as anything, it was because KD willed it. And Christian isn't going to have that kind of like control on the market. He's not going to have the salary that requires assets to be moved around to fit him in. And it's not as though there's this like deep, overwhelming bond between Christian and the Pistons where he's not going to feel right leaving Detroit without doing them a solid and demanding that his signing team just takes care of the Pistons for no reason. None of the components that would be involved in forcing a sign and trade are relevant here. So it's just not viable. It's not going to be the way that Christian Wood departs the Pistons.
What do you think about it, Sham?
No, you guys hit the nail on the head. It just like Christian Wood is not some max contract guy who can dictate where he wants to go and force the Pistons' hand to do anything, or force another team's hand to do anything. And yeah, like you said, like he's an unrestricted free agent. A team can just pay for him to be there.
So So I think that was pretty simple. A lot of fans are saying, "Oh, if you leave without at least a sign and trade," or like even Rod said it, and I'm sure there's a lot of people. Obviously, a lot of people feel this way, but like we've said, we really just don't see like why would any team would want to do this? Why Christian Wood would want to do this? So like it literally makes almost zero sense. So I think that every Pistons fan should just forget about that happening. It's either Christian Wood's resigning or he's leaving. There is no sign and trade happening. If that were to happen, I put that, after what I've read about how it works, like I'd put the percentage chance of like under 1% of it happening. Because I just don't see like why any team would engage in this when they can just simply sign them. Like I know somebody tweeted at me, and I think it was me and Duncan, the conversation we were having. I don't remember who it was, but they tweeted that, or like an example would be if the Nets wanted him and they said, we'll do a sign and trade, we'll give you DeAndre Jordan and some picks, and you give us Christian Wood. I don't know if like the Pistons would be interested in doing that. I don't know if the Nets would actually even be wanting to do that either. But I mean, like that's the kind. Basically, what I'm saying is that would be like the type of scenario like where it would happen. It'd have to be a team who has like no cap space for him, but really wants him and can give up assets back to the Pistons, match the contract, etc., and do that. But I just don't. I really don't see that happening, especially with like what we've heard about the Phoenix Suns being like one of the teams interested in him. I think they can just like give him the money, can't they?
Well, yeah, like also capped out teams can just use their exception to sign him if they really want him that badly, and if he really wants to go there that badly.
Yeah. So Pistons fans, sorry, if Christian Wood leaves, it's gonna be no value. Either he's walking away from Detroit or he's coming back. There is like no sign trade happening. Go ahead and get that out your head. I'm sorry to break it to you, but this is what it is.
And lean in closely, people listening. It's okay. He's not that good.
I see. Now, Sham, what you're doing by saying that is you're setting me up to get feedback, get hate again on Twitter for being a Christian Wood hater. That's all you're setting me up for with this.
Yeah, exactly.
So I there goes another day of Sham trying to start some stuff for me on Twitter. Just insane. But we can go to the next topic now. So I haven't told Sham or Duncan about this topic beforehand. So I'm trying to catch them off guard, and I think this is going to take up the next 10 minutes of the podcast, and then we could probably end it there. So obviously, with everything going on with Christian Wood, he goes on Instagram and he gets the Pistons fans just like going crazy because he's asking people where he should sign next year. Pistons fans are going crazy, so I'm sure they're gonna be sucked into this podcast, listening about how what's going to happen with Christian Wood. So we went through every possibility with Christian Wood, I think, except this one, and it's one that I'm starting to consider, or not. I wouldn't say consider because I don't know how I feel about it yet, but it's something that's crossed my mind that I think that Pistons should at least think about doing. If this would be like last resort kind of thing. Like, this would be something that they have to, like, if they already know he's going somewhere else, if they don't do this, and it's their last chance. So I'll present this to you guys, and then you guys can give me your feedback and what you guys think and what you guys would do, etc. So let's say free agency hits, free agency comes around. Christian Wood wants to come back to the Pistons. The Pistons want Christian Wood back. But let's say the Phoenix Suns come and offer him, let's say the Pistons offer him like $12 million, and then Phoenix comes around and says, hey, we'll give you $15 million. Christian Wood says, listen, if you guys don't give me $15 million, I'm going to Phoenix. So obviously $15 million from what we've seen, from the little projected, what his value would be, what I want his value to be, what I've seen, what I believe most people would say their value of him is, that's probably a little bit more than what they want to pay him. Now, so tell me this. Would you, if you were the Pistons, would you at least consider, and then after you answer that, after considering it, would you do it? Would you sign Christian Wood to that $15 million? Or even if it's 16, let's say it's $16 million or $15 million. Basically, the point is, would you sign Christian Wood like to more than you want, or like overpay a few $1 million to ensure the chance that you have him under contract and you can still trade him down the line and get value for him at some point? Like, would you basically what I'm saying is, would you overpay him to ensure that he's on your roster with the chance still to trade him instead of just losing him for a few $1 million? So, Duncan, you can go first here.
I mean, like, that 15, 16 million range is definitely where it gets a little hot for me. So I think that is a range that is maybe a little high. But then again, if you're a little high, we're not talking about paying John Lure like $60 million or whatever it was, you know? Mm-hmm. So going a little high, like, what are we thinking here? Like 3 years, 45 million, 3 years, 50 million, something like that.
Let's go 3 years, 50.
I mean, I think that's still a number that you can trade him for. So that's still sort of like in the range that I would be willing to do. Like, I don't think that the Pistons should nickel and dime it, in that, like, you know, if it's 1 million annual average value or something like that over what they're willing to do, I don't think that they should necessarily like cut it hard and cold right there. But I mean, that's kind of my stance anyway. You know, like, they shouldn't overpay, but at the same time, like, they should be reasonable when it comes to like their upper level. So like, 3 and 45 is like where they would be more comfortable cutting the line. 3 and 50 is probably not so far off that they should throw in the towel. So, it's not ideal, but if they were able to pay up a little more and outbid a team that has a more fixed limit, then that's fine. But you're also not trying to get into like a bidding war. Like if Phoenix comes back with 3 and 60, that's a wrap. So like they need to not get super myopic and decide like we're just gonna get this guy. There does need to be like a rational upper level that they observe, whether that's the number that I'm comfortable with, in that 3 and 50 range, which that's high for me. 3 and 45 is high as well, I think, but like still reasonable. You definitely want to make sure that you're not going overboard when it comes to trying to win a bidding war.
Sham, what do you think?
So let me get this straight. So if Phoenix comes to Christian and is like, yo, we're going to give you 3 years, $50 million, and the Pistons have previously offered something in the $9 to $12 million per year range, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Christian's like, yo, Pistons, you guys better match or I'm going to walk to Phoenix. I would literally drive down to the Pistons facility, go stop at CVS on the way, pick up some Copper Tone SPF 50, pack some Tommy Bahamas, khakis, squirt the Copper Tone on Christian's back, and send him on his way to Phoenix. I am not paying more.
Damn.
I am not paying more than $12 million per year for Christian Wood for a lot of reasons, but I think the most important reason.
Go ahead, go into the reasons. I'd like to hear these.
Yeah, I will. Okay, so the very first reason is I think he is the product. Like of course he's very talented. I think he is a good starter in this league. In no way is he a messiah of any kind. And I think he'll be a solid starter. Period. And I think his value at a solid starter range is between 9 and 12 million per year. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I think he doesn't necessarily fit the Pistons timeline very well. If you look at Sekou, who was drafted last year with the intent of being like the guy one day. That's why they drafted him at age 18 and haven't really played in big minutes. They focus more on like the development stuff. Like he's supposed to be a guy that the Pistons build around, ideally in the next 3 to 5 years. Christian Wood is already 25. Are we sure that we're not seeing his prime right now? Like, is he going to get that much better than he is right now? And if that's the case, is he worth $12 million 3 years from now? Is he worth $15 million 3 years from now? And I don't know if he necessarily is. And then also, I think the most important reason is I'm of the opinion that the Pistons should be, yes, like Duncan said, like if they're going to sign free agents, they need to be free agents that the Pistons can flip. Like, find diamonds in the rough or find guys that have been like shunned from the league. Like D Rose is a good example, right? Pistons picked him up, kind of like dusted him off, and then now they're going to trade him again, potentially. They need to do that with more people like that. And that's the whole point of this cap space that they have, is to find guys that they can flip for assets, keep getting lottery tickets for the 2021, 2022, 2023 draft. Keep acquiring assets like every rebuilding team does. And even though it's 5 to 10 million more per year than what the Pistons offered, that 5 to 10 million more per year, sorry, $3 to $5 million per year. So if Phoenix comes and offers 15 or 16 million, that matters when it comes to fitting all of these bad contracts in exchange for assets into your cap sheet. That all matters. So for a guy that may or may not pan out, for a guy that's going to project to maybe be like a good starter at best, it's just not worth it. Let him walk. It's okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate your whole story time of going to CVS and grabbing all these essentials for Christian Wood on his way to Phoenix.
Look, I mean, I want him to go to Phoenix, but I don't want him to get sunburned. So, like, I don't hate the guy.
Fair enough. I'm sure he'd appreciate that from me very much. But
Sham is just trying to come to terms with the fact he's not going to see the sun again for 7 months.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, I'm like reminiscing here. I'm like, oh man, I want to wear some Tommy Bahamas and wear some shades and put some coppers on my back.
Yeah, as it's looking right now, you're not even walking out the front door, so
I don't even know if my front door will open.
That's fair. but I think with this, I'm in the middle. I could be convinced either way because I don't know, because I feel like I lean more with what Sham's saying, because like I said, I think Christian Wood deserves to get paid based off what he did last year. I just don't know if it's from the Pistons. I'm also skeptical because of like what I said earlier. Because I think it's a very good chance that this could be fluke from last year, his shooting, and if his shooting goes away, I think that like eliminates a lot of the good that he did last year. If he can't shoot like he did, I think his value goes really down. So, and he's not a good defender at all. I saw, actually, just real quick, I saw some Phoenix Suns guy say, I forget who it was, but someone said he's not that bad on defense, and I almost laughed for like 10 minutes because like I made a Christian Wood video like 2 months ago and literally like went through so many. I went through one game. I was just like going through one game trying to find like defensive clips, and I got like 30 defensive clips of him like doing something wrong or like losing, like he stops paying attention to a play or like loses where he is or just seems like he's not even paying attention to the scouting report. So like he very much is not that good on defense at all. So like I said, I just think that last year could be a fluke. I hope it's not. I hope he gets paid. I hope he has a good career. But he's talented, but I think it's a good chance it is. I think it's 50-50. It's fluke. That's one, and that's why I'm hesitant to overpay him. But then again, if he performs like last year, I also agree with Duncan, or I'd take it even further. I'm not sure if he's performing like last year and he gets any type of better. Like if he gets better at anything, like he gets slightly better at defense, or he gets better at like passing out of like driving to the rim, passing out, or just finding an open man, or just simply being a capable passer. If he does any of those things, I think that you can still trade him and get good value for him at $15 million. I think at $12 million you can get good value for him right now. I'm not sure at $15 million right now you could get the same type of value if he loses any type of like shooting or anything. But I think there's a good chance that you could still get value for him down the road if you overpay slightly, like $3 million. But then I also know that's a chance to take. And like Sham said, is Christian Wood really that type of guy where you want to take that type of chance? Like, is he that good to where you should be taking that type of chance, overpaying him in your first year of a rebuild, or at least what we believe is going to be a rebuild or some kind of retool or something? It's going to be it's something. It's retool, rebuild. What was the other word what's the word that Troy Weaver used in his press conference? He didn't use rebuild. Do you guys remember what it was?
Was it retool?
I think it was it restore. It was he like used a special word for it. He didn't use rebuild. He said this isn't a rebuild. This is I forget what it was.
This is a retool, not a rebuild.
Yeah, so like he didn't even call it a rebuild. So
it's all semantics.
This is all great coach speak.
Yeah, it's going to be a bad team, but they don't want to admit it this early right now and get Tom Gores in a lather.
Oh yeah, see,
that's what it is. That's what it is. Like, I mean, we all know what it is. Call it whatever you want, Troy. We know what it is.
So Troy said June 23rd. He says this is not a rebuild; it's a restoring. So call it whatever you want.
Whatever, Troy.
Yeah, call it whatever you want. Is Christian Wood really that type of guy where you should be taking that type of chance on him? And it's just like I can see both sides to it. It's I'll say that's entertaining enough for me to consider and possibly be persuaded each way. Because I just know Sham's a little extreme on this. I didn't expect Sham to be this extreme on this. I didn't expect that.
Do you know me? Do you know my brand?
I mean, I understand. That's fair. But like, I understood that. I was like, I considered myself to be a little bit more pessimistic on Christian Wood. But then Sham came out here and like completely blew me out the water. Like, Sham.
Okay, no, I think Christian Wood is good, but I don't think he's more than $12 million per year good. That's my whole point.
I agree. It's just that I don't know. It's something about. I think that probably for me, it probably goes back to the trade deadline when they traded Andre, It's just ever since then, it's just like I wrote about this too. It's like you didn't get no value for Andre Drummond when I believe you could. If you were going to sign a GM this offseason, you should have just let him make the move this offseason. Let him decide what he wanted to do. But then again, some people would counter back at me and say Troy Weaver wouldn't have showed up if Andre was here, which I guess maybe is true, but we don't know. But basically, you didn't get no value for Andre Drummond, who is like your star, your face of your franchise, former All-NBA and All-Star. You didn't get nothing for Reggie. You didn't get nothing for Markieff. You didn't trade Derrick Rose. You didn't trade Langston. So it's like I just feel like that if you don't get anything for Christian Wood or if you just let him walk, there's a part of me that's like, damn, what was last season? Just cardio? Everyone was just getting cardio in last season because you didn't win. You lost and you didn't even get a high pick. You fell in the draft. And then you also didn't even get value for like anybody on your team. Everybody that had any type of value on your team just left for nothing. So it's like, what was last year? Just like a simulation. Like, what the hell did you even accomplish last year? It's like you didn't do anything at all last year except like make things worse. There wasn't a single thing that you can point to last year that would have been good at all. So it's just like a part of me is just like, damn, you can't let that happen. You can't just let the entire 2019-2020 season just like be just for cardio. I don't know. That's just how I feel.
That's literally what rebuilding teams do, though. It's for cardio, and the end prize is getting a bad pick.
Yeah, but we didn't. But that's like I'm saying, we didn't even get that bad. We ended up falling in the draft, so it's like it wasn't.
Yeah, but you don't know that. Yeah, but you don't know that ahead of time. Like they were. I mean, all things considered, they positioned themselves well going into the offseason.
Yeah.
Like you didn't know that they were going to fall before the lottery.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean,
like,
now
all things considered, the Pistons were looking at a top 5 pick going into the I was going to say summer, but off season, and then they fell. So like you can't really knock them for that. They put themselves in the best position they could, and honestly, I think they were terrified that Andre Drummond was going to opt in. Which I've been reading somewhere that he may not opt in. I don't know. Maybe that was fake news, but I read somewhere that he's not going to opt in. And then if that's the case, listen, like I want your listeners to come in a little closer again. I'd rather pay Andre Drummond than Christian Wood that money.
All right, okay, so keep it right there. Just keep it right there. Duncan, I want you to respond directly to that right there. I want to hear your response directly to that.
Well, like the same amount of money?
Yes.
No, let's say 15 million. Like, let's say if we're talking about Christian Wood being valued at 15, 16 million. If Andre Drummond came along and was like, hey, I'll come back to Detroit for 15, 16 million.
I mean, if you get Andre Drummond for Clint Capella money, then you take it, you know. I don't think that that's even remotely a possibility. Like not with Detroit, obviously, like that door is closed. But anywhere on the market. So I mean, that might be all that is out there for him. I'm really very eager to see just like how the market does shape up for him. Like all I saw was that they are far apart on extension talks.
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't know anything about like his opt-out plans or whatever. I think that his plan is still to opt in. And
why wouldn't you? 28 million?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's fairly clear. But I mean, yeah, if you can get Andre Drummond and Christian Wood / Clint Capella money, that's a whole other story for sure. But I don't know, even like with the death of the big man or whatever, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be on the table.
Well, I mean, basically, Sham, like you said, they may have positioned themselves fairly well in going into the draft, but my point is that the reality is set now. You didn't get a top pick. You didn't get any value for any of these guys, and now you're in risk of losing Christian Wood for nothing. So then, like, it's just reality now for me. If it was me, it'd just be hitting reality. Like, damn. So last year, dead ass was for nothing. Last year was just like nothing at all because this is a weak draft too. So it's not even like so. There's a very real possibility that the one draft that you actually get a top pick, even if we did get a top pick, that you get you don't get a very good player anyways.
I would disagree that it was for nothing.
Yeah, I don't think it was for nothing either.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. No, I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, part of what the whole strategy has been for the Pistons, basically, like in the short Stefanski tenure, was largely about like running out the clock. You know, they had so many contracts that were underwater. You know, Reggie, Andre, Galloway, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A big part of the strategy was to not make things worse, which they successfully did not make anything worse. Perhaps Stefanski wasn't some sort of like value-seeking guru. He wasn't causing teams to make huge mistakes in trades or anything like that. But on a roster where like basically every single contract that wasn't a rookie contract was like either a little bit underwater or just like drowning in water, there wasn't anything that could be done with most of those deals. Like maybe they could have gotten a late second round pick for Markieff Morris, whatever. I don't think that's probably the case. But there just wasn't value to be gained. There was most likely not much of a market for Andre Drummond, given his cap number, given the uncertainty surrounding like what his future plans were, given the uncertainty about like the very archetype of a player that he is, being like conducive to winning basketball. So I think that ultimately Stefanski was around to run the clock out and not do anything stupid, and he did that pretty adequately, I'd say.
Go ahead, Sham.
And yes, not do anything stupid and maximize the space that we were going to have this year. And the Andre Drummond trade, yes, there was very little value in return for that one, but I think the most important asset that the Pistons got back was $28 million in space this year.
Yep.
So now they can wheel and deal, like help facilitate other trades or acquire these bad contracts without really feeling much of a pinch. Because if they had Andre Drummond's deal, the $28 million plus Blake, that's now like over 60, almost 70 million tied up in two people. And now that limits like the flexibility you can make this offseason with trades and acquiring assets and like basically doing what retooling teams do.
Yeah, and cap space is going to be more valuable than ever.
Especially now, yes.
Yeah, going into next off season. So that's something the Pistons can position themselves really well for with, a lot of good value, short-term 1 year, like or 1 year plus team option kind of deals. And so I think that sort of the general consensus is that the off season is going to be fairly quiet around the league regarding like trades and so forth. But the trade deadline is going to be like the craziest one we've seen in years. So positioning themselves for the trade deadline and not getting in their own way, not getting caught up in, the Fred VanVleets, who, very good player, but not for the Pistons. Not getting caught up in like that kind of rat race for assets is going to be really huge.
Like the Pistons needed to position themselves in going into the 2021 offseason, like next year, to be able to be a team that is not going to make a play for any of those coveted 2021 free agents that are coming available, but to be a team that can serve as a dumping ground for a team that is looking at one of those 2021 free agents. Like if Miami, for whatever reason, needs to make space to bring in some 2021 free agent, now they can trade with Detroit, give us a bunch of assets for that space for some bad contract, and then now they have the space to acquire a free agent. So Pistons need to like position themselves in that kind of way to be able to be like the leech or be like the garbage can for bad contracts in exchange for assets next year.
Yep, they're like a clearinghouse that takes a service fee for transactions. They make it so other teams can get what they want, and they take a piece of the action for their service and time, basically.
Well, I simply would add that I'd say two things in response. One, to what you just said, Sham. Wouldn't that have basically happened? Like, you could have had no GM, and that would have if you would just let everything just play out, that would have ended up happening anyways. Reggie Jackson's contract was expiring. Markieff was expiring. Derrick Rose is expiring now. Andre, if he opted in, would have been expiring. So even if you walked into 2021, all those, like, going into the 2021 season or the free agency, you have that cap space anyways, even if you just would have done nothing.
Well, no, because
it happened either way.
No, because then you had like say the Andre Drummond trade would have never happened. You would have had $28 million on the books this summer, so that you couldn't make any
Yeah,
trade.
but you said that it's
Walk with me. Hang on. You wouldn't have the opportunity to make those kind of trades this summer for free agents this year, which maybe won't happen, but at least now they have the flexibility in case it does happen. And then even more importantly, next trade deadline, you don't have $28 million on your books. The next trade deadline is really.
I'd also counter as well with. I'd say two things along with that is that one. Actually, let me just say something about what Duncan said earlier. Before I say something, respond to that, Sham. Duncan, so like with Ed Stefanski and him just like basically not being asked to screw up, basically what you're saying. That may be true, but I can't find myself to give credit to something where you're like your job's just not to screw up. I can't find myself to give credit to that. And then also second, while he didn't do nothing like catastrophically mess up. I think he made multiple questionable moves that I'm not a fan of either. So I don't feel like I can give credit for that or anything that he really, or give credit basically to the Stefanski era at all by anything he did. Because like I said, I also believe that if you just would have had nobody at GM and just let everything plan out, what Sham is saying for 2021 would have happened anyways, because everyone was expiring either way. So you would have got the money either way going to 2021.
But they're expiring at the end of next season, which means that you would have not had the flexibility that you otherwise have now at the trade deadline for next year.
So then my counter to that would be what my counter has been all season is that I don't think having Andre Drummond as a true expiring would have been bad. I think that actually would have helped them more.
Yeah, but an expiring at $28 million is different than having an expiring at like 10.
Yeah, but either way, I think you get more for Andre Drummond once you know what his future plans are. If he doesn't have an opt-in, opt-out, and you know he's a true expiring at $28 million, I think you get more for him.
But you lack the flexibility because now, in order to facilitate a trade that gets you to where you need to be in the offseason, you need to then trade Andre Drummond in the trade deadline, and then make the deals that you needed to make to position yourself properly on the offseason. That was a thorn in the side of the rebuilding process, and that was always going to be a thorn in the side. It's just how much of a thorn was it, and were they willing to accept a lower return for that thorn?
And I understand. No, yeah, I understand that. I just disagree with it. I would have rather just had Andre here now. It's not even about Andre because I don't want everyone to think that I'm like sticking like it's me wishing Andre was here. It's not even about Andre. It's just about I don't feel like that what was accomplished this past season was something anybody should be giving a pat on the back for. I feel like like I said, I feel like first of all, this offseason, they also got lucky somewhat with this offseason. When they made that trade, they didn't know COVID was going to shut down the season and sink the cap and make it to where that you're talking about with the cap, the salary cap, or the free agency and everything in the offseason now with the salary cap being lower. It's going to be quiet, and now the trade deadline, like, they didn't know that was going to happen. So he somewhat got lucky with all that. Well, and then also, I'll maintain until Andre becomes an actual free agent that you could have got value for him once he was a true expiring. And then even if you didn't, like I said, you could have just walked into the 2021 free agency with the same cap space you're talking about now if you just do nothing. So I can't give. I just can't give much value or pat in the back or clapper at all for what Stefanski did. I feel like at the very least, like Duncan said, he didn't mess anything up badly, which is fair. But then at the worst, like that's the very best outcome for me. But then at the worst, like you forfeited a lot of things you could have got value for, and got a little bit lucky. That's basically why I stand with it.
So I want to let Duncan respond to all this in just a second, but I just want to do one more thing. So I think of this, and like I reserve judgment on Troy Weaver or Ed Stefanski, anything, because I see what they were trying to do. Like basically they had an apartment full of ugly furniture, and then they sold all that furniture out, and now they have an empty apartment. And now what the judgment that I'm going to be looking at right now is like, what are they going to furnish this apartment with? How are they going to utilize that space? And that's what I'm going to judge them on, because they set themselves up to be able to do these things. But now let's see what they do with that. But go ahead, Duncan.
Okay, yeah. I have 3 quick points that I want to hit. First off, the cap is not going to dip very much. Most likely, there's going to be a smoothing in effect that they should have had in 2016, and I think they've kind of learned their lesson, especially in something that they don't want to have affecting player salaries too much. So there's going to be increased escrow, but salaries won't dip too much. So I think that the salary cap for the coming season is going to be right around what it was this season. So as far as getting lucky around COVID, I don't think that's really especially valid. I think that it's kind of like a non-factor. As far as Stefanski getting a pat on the back or whatever, I don't think that he really had a path for contending for executive of the year or anything. The Pistons books were what the Pistons books were. The most creative approach wasn't really going to do much for them. The freedom that Stefanski had was virtually nil as far as like what clever moves he could make that would free up space or get assets. There just wasn't moves available. There weren't options available simply because like they were so far again underwater with every contract that wasn't like Luke Kennard basically. And I think that whether the Drummond deal in particular was a good deal or a bad deal depends on whether the Pistons wanted to have cap space and flexibility for the coming trade deadline. I think if they wrap everything around that trade deadline and just stocking up on like massive assets, it's a whole lot easier to plan ahead when you've got like that extra year to do so than if like you're coming up on the trade deadline and you still have Andre Drummond's contract on your books. Teams know you have the contract on your books and you're desperate to get rid of it. And now maybe like you're having to give up trade assets or draft assets in order to get rid of Drummond's contract. Teams would have had the Pistons completely over a barrel next season because they would have had the knowledge that the Pistons are like just so desperate to get rid of this contract that is not team friendly whatsoever and doesn't exactly fit what contenders need. It's really a matter of whether the Pistons were going to prioritize the coming trade deadline, this upcoming trade deadline, whenever that is for the 2021 season, or whether they were going to try and run it back with Drummond down the road. If they're going to prioritize the coming trade deadline, they had to get rid of Drummond as quickly as possible, and doing so in a fashion that would not force them to incentivize, like sending off their own draft picks in order to make a deal happen, is probably the best way to do it. So, no, there's no path for some sort of executive of the year campaign for Stefanski, but if that trade deadline was the goal, was the target, was the thing that they wanted to focus on, then they were successful in that, and I think that's definitely worth giving them credit for.
All right. Well, we can end it with that. I'll just say that I get, like I said, I get what you guys are saying. I get what, like, obviously I understand why they did it and I understand what their moves were, like the point behind the moves. I just disagree with it. It would be for future episodes of this. You guys, for everyone listening, you guys can pay attention to future episodes. I can maybe talk about that, but we would get like into a whole different conversation, which we kind of have already. But I don't know. Like I said, I understand what you guys are saying. And I understand why they did it. Obviously, I'm aware of everything going on. I just disagree with the decision to do it. I can get behind their logic behind it, and also think that the logic wasn't great. But that's just where I stand with it. I can talk about it actually in the next episode. I'll talk about it for you guys listening, or maybe I can make a video about it or something. I'll talk about it again sometime in the future. But I think that's about it for this episode. Is there anything else you guys want to say or talk about?
Looks like Duncan's dog is looking to chime in here.
I thought
No, that's my dog.
Oh, it's your dog.
Yeah, somebody's
No,
dog
that's
wants
mine.
to speak up.
Yeah.
No, I think my bases have been covered.
Sham, you good? Any
Yeah.
more fun stories or fun comparisons you want to throw out here or whatever?
Well, I just want to leave everybody with this final thought that I have, and coming close. It's okay if Christian Wood leaves. Everything will be fine.
I promise. I just want to say this real quick. I'm sorry for everyone listening. I did not plan on Sham going ASMR on us multiple times in the podcast. That was not part of the plan or the list of things to get done during this podcast. But I guess it was Sham's added feature anytime you have him on. So
you have to categorize this podcast, don't you?
Yeah, I
not safe for work.
There you go. I suppose so. But thank you guys for listening. I thank Duncan and Sham for coming on. I appreciate it. You can find Duncan on Twitter at Duncan Smith NBA. Make sure you guys go follow him. I'm sure all you guys actually are already following him, so there's no need for me to even plug Duncan stuff. Duncan has a pretty.
Duncan should be plugging your stuff.
Yeah, I do. Actually.
I do. What do you mean?
Actually, something I will plug for Duncan. Go check out. Actually, Duncan, you should have made this. No, Duncan, you gotta change your pin tweet, dog. You gotta make your pin tweet Rachel Nichols Duncan on you. That has to be your new. Screw KCP now. That has to be your new pin tweet.
The best part is that's not the only celebrity that's dunked on Duncan.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as far as dunks go, it was pretty collegial. You know, we had a nice little conversation.
She killed you with kindness.
I guess.
We should, you guys. But really, Duncan, you should have. Before I end this, just real quick, what you should have is your pin tweet legit. You should have just a thread of all the celebrity encounters that you have started and stuff. Don't you? You have some what was it? Ted Cruz, Isaiah Thomas. Didn't you get a guy completely banned off of Twitter as well?
No, that was me.
Oh no! Yeah, that was Sham.
You
did that
you
one.
got what's his face?
Jeff Moss.
There you go.
You guys, that's what if I were you guys, I just would just put that as my ultimate record against these celebs.
Nah, man, my record speaks for itself. People who know. I don't need to promote my shit, man. They know.
All right, fair enough. All right, so yeah, you can follow Duncan Smith NBA. You can follow Sham at Sham God. No, he's not a god. I don't know why he has that as his app, but you can follow him there. Also, check out Sham's podcast with him and his friend Keith. Two Gods and a Goose. Sham, as much as you talk to me about needing to be consistent, dude, I think you need to put out some more episodes for all of us with those podcasts, man. But
the production value is just too high, man. I gotta it's going into those pods. It's a big preparation and shit. So it's a lot.
It sounds like excuses, but that is what it is. But I thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Sham and Duncan, for joining, and be tuned for the next episode of the Coos Ballroom Podcast. I'll see you guys later.